Hell's most evil trick is to disguise itself as paradise. The Calendar Killer is a German suspense thriller currently streaming on Amazon. It was directed by Adolfo J. Kolmer and was written by Suzanne Schneider, based on stories and characters by Sebastian Fisk. If I mispronounced any of those names, I do apologize. Check out their IMDb pages for the full listens of their work, and it centers around a lady named Klara, played by Louise Hayer, who calls a helpline, and fortunately, a life raft is thrown to her in the form of a nice man named Jules, that just so happens to be working the night shift, and this helpline is to make sure that any potential victims of any kind of assault, especially women, are guided through to their house, to their residence, and then they are safe. Because crimes, unfortunately, pop up like that, and women need to feel safe. They need to feel like they aren't alone, and this lifeline helps them through that. And Klara needs a goddamn lifeline because, unfortunately, she has been given an ultimatum by a vicious serial killer called, the Calendar Killer in a movie called The Calendar Killer. I know, how goddamn on the nose. So on the nose that even Herb Abrams said, man, I don't know what I'm even on about because I've been dead for nearly 30 years. That is a deep cut reference for wrestling fans, but nevertheless, these two talk, and they share some, personal details about each other. We get some flashbacks about how Klara ended up in this particular situation. Klara, however you want to say it. And she basically recounts all the stuff that led her to this particular situation, to this particular, moment where bad stuff is going to potentially happen. And because this killer is so vicious, she has no choice but to follow through with the ultimatum. The police won't help. She's in a not so good relationship. She doesn't have anyone to rely on except Jules. And from there, we get suspense. We get, some investigation of crimes. And we get a thriller that starts out all right, but to be quite honest, is very fucking obvious from nearly the beginning who the killer is. And unfortunately, that ends up becoming very obvious, and it stumbles and staggers. And while it has a nice theme of abuse and handling abuse and not taking that stuff, and you shouldn't ever abuse anybody that you claim to love, you shouldn't abuse anybody anyway. But if you are in a relationship with somebody, you need to treat them like the queen or king that they are. They love you, you need to love them, and you need to not be a goddamn piece of shit. Now, as far as that aspect of the movie, it handles it well. The acting isn't all that bad. Actually, the acting is pretty strong. The problem is the story just isn't all that strong. It's kind of basic and really dissolves and just ends up kind of messy, especially in the third act. It is free to watch on Amazon if you are an Amazon Prime member. And I do want to say, I see potential with what the director and the writer was doing. There are ideas here that could work, but yeah, this kind of just limps along, especially by the third act, and just really, really gets, I don't know, it ends up kind of becoming a little more basic, I think, than intended. Not all that bad, but still not all that great. I am going to get into spoilers, which really will not take very long, but that's just your warning right there. Again, on Amazon, if you want to check it out. Let's see what else the people can do in the future. 3, 2, 1, spoilers. So I do want to say, Louise Hayer actually does a pretty good job as a lead here. And she wakes up and sees this warning, 12/6, the day it turns out that her and her husband Martin got married. And the warning is, him or you, one of you will die. And then, there's like a text. It's in German, but fortunately, if you have the subtitles on, you'll be all right. It says, knowing the date of your death means that you already have, started dying. And that actually is rather haunting, in all honesty. So, yeah, Jules is talking to her, but has his daughter that he's taking care of. And then there's a guy named, their babysitter named Vigo, who Klara is talking to. She's also trying to evade her husband, Martin, who's very abusive. Frederick Muck, not actually totally sure how to say that. He's fine. He's kind of a one-note character, but he does his job pretty well. And the idea is Klara just can't take it anymore. She decides she's going to take her own goddamn life. Fortunately, Jules is kind of able to talk her out of this, because he tells her some personal stuff about what he's gone through. Like, don't do this. It's not worth it. Your daughter is going to think that something's wrong. all this, and she even leaves a voicemail on Vigo's phone because Vigo's a babysitter. Tell my daughter it's not her fault. And then she decides not to do it. She ends up talking to Jules and recounting how her and Martin, recently met, recently had an anniversary. She ends up in a perverted sex club in Germany. I know, how goddamn shocking. Apparently they're popular there. I guess. I don't know. She also has, mental health issues, to the point where she needs to take medication. It turns out that her and Jules's late wife were also there. And there's also a history of abuse. Martin came from an abusive household. The dad was abusive. The mother either looked the other way or left. And, same thing to an extent happened with Klara. And, yeah, the underlying thing of abuse and how that stuff can be passed down hereditarily, I don't even think that's a word. That's something that you actually could lean on. Unfortunately, the movie kind of falls into some tropes and some basicness. I did like one point where there was a suspecting, by Jules that somebody might be watching him because he calls his dad to basically get, pass along some information and everything, like find this woman Klara, I would need to know she's okay. And he crushes up some light bulbs and puts them in a path, a walking path there, a glass path. I wonder if you can guess why he's doing that. I think you pretty much guess who the goddamn killer is. So, he tells a story about how his wife died in a fire, and, that all but one child died. Well, about that. So we don't ever actually see the babysitter until later. Klara couldn't do that. She talks about all the stuff that she went through. The abuse, the fact she woke up in a basement, with weird blood or whatever, or a red viscous, the red liquid of the new blood. That, remember when they did that in WCW? It was so goddamn bad. So, a passerby eventually does come and find Klara after she escapes her household when a guy shows up. It turns out that the guy is actually Jules' dad. He's investigating, but, maybe he's the killer. He's not. This guy Hendrik manages to find Klara on the road, and then Klara ends up going with him. She sees, a taser and some other stuff, but he always has that because of his line of work. And she was really abused at that sex club and everything. But then Martin manages to find both of them. Starts to beat the shit out of Hendrik. She's like, look, I'll go with you, but I am taking care of Hendrik and putting him at least in his car so he doesn't freeze to death. And she's been talking to Jules and talking about a bunch of personal stuff and everything. Jules' daughter also is feverish at this point and feeds some medicine. Feverish and freaking out saying, mommy, mommy. Like, okay, yeah, the kid survived the house fire. That's not it. So, yeah, basically she goes with Martin, but she ends up taking Hendrik's taser. She ends up tasing Martin. And then she gets back to this house. And oh, look, there's broken glass on the floor because Jules has been the killer the whole goddamn time. And why is he doing this? He's doing this because he came from an abusive household. And he is trying to make sure that, all women know how to fight back. So he's going to make them make the choice between themselves or their husbands. Or their boyfriends or whatever. That's where it was obvious. Like, it was very obvious once he put the glass down. I go, oh, he's a killer. Like, that's what it is. And that's not his daughter. That's actually Klara's daughter. And then Martin ends up trying to attack Jules, but he forgets how reflections work. He gets tied up. Klara ends up stabbing stabbing Jules in the foot. And that's after he had already walked on his bare feet on this broken glass. Good job remembering your surroundings, fuck nugget. But then suddenly he's about to kill, and then boom. And it turns out that Jules' dad was aware, recognized his handwriting, and came to warn Klara. It was too late, and there you go. So, there you are. That's it right there. Martin then suddenly, sometime later, is making a speech in front of police. For some award thing or whatever. And then suddenly everybody's looking at their phones, and there's this recording. This recording of Martin confessing everything that he did to Klara. Because after he beat up Hendrik, they went in the car. Right before she tased him, she was texting, who the babysitter is. Or, texting the babysitter, seeing if he's okay. Oh, yes, and the babysitter also was trapped in a spare room and ended up on a ledge and seemingly died, I guess. But she actually, instead of texting, was recording, and now he admitted to all that stuff and everything. So he got arrested, and then we see other women wandering around, and then 5 years for Martin and Klara, her daughter, and a dog are happy. See, again, it's like there's ideas here, and it's not the worst thing I've seen. But it's like a 2-star effort, and because of that, because it's below average, it gets an F. Now, there's potential here. I just didn't care for it, and I just didn't think it quite gelled. My personal opinion, though I appreciate what they were trying to do. And obviously, the ideas of abuse and everything need to be broadcast to make sure that abuse like this stops. That being said, as a movie, though, it didn't gel for me. So, agree, disagree what I said, like, share, subscribe, Twitter, Letterboxd, Blue Sky handles in the description. I'm John Retlin. I'll see you soon.